The Green agenda is taking inspiration from the illiberal days of lockdown. What's happening in Oxford?
Well, Oxford has something called a 15-minute city that they want to implement. We have already been told by Duncan Enright, who's got the title as a cabinet as being the head of transport and development, but actually seems to not want to do too much development and only want certain kinds of transport. What they want to do... now, bear in mind that Oxford already has lots of LTNs, low-traffic neighbourhoods, which we've seen happen all across the country. There's been gridlock in places like Hackney, Haringey and in Brixton, and we'll come back to that. But they have a number of LTNs that have really suffocated local businesses and residents. And now they're saying what they want to have is bus gates. They call them all a trial. They say it's a trial. When they did, but they have bus gates, which will mean you can't drive in many arteries, and you're only allowed 100 passes a year. So if you have 2 cars, that means 50 each, to go to certain areas, and you otherwise have to go much further around a whole ring road. So it's meaning that people's journeys that are really important are getting massively delayed. There's far more pollution. It's allegedly to stop some pollution, they say, but there's pollution often in very run-down areas. Many people in East Oxford who are much poorer and much more run down, they don't have facilities around them in 15 minutes to walk to. So once again, ordinary people are being punished more. But the thing that's most problematic with this in Oxford, and we're seeing it happen in some other cities across the UK, is that when consultations go out, like they have done with the low-traffic neighbourhoods, the majority of people are responding saying no. 5,600 respondents in Oxford responded. And if you look at, there was a Freedom of Information form, if you look at the responses on some, over 3,600 were negative on one of them, which constituted 93%. In spite of all of that, and also people going around saying that, there were representatives saying the majority of people believe in this, businesses have challenged it, residents have challenged it, and they're still going ahead. And they're calling it all a trial, but the trial of the 15-minute city can't exist without the trial of the LTNs. And as Duncan Enright said, it's happening anyway. Now, another thing to note about this, where this has come from is that the international C40s, which is mayors internationally, who Sadiq Khan is currently the chair of that, so they're from around the States and other countries internationally, we've got a declaration to tackle the emergency climate crisis. Right. As though the issue in cities is not better hospitals or housing or infrastructure or transport or any of those things, but there's this crisis. It's almost like a perpetual state of crisis, rather than a sober addressing of how we deal with things if there are some conditions that we need to change. And he, in London, Sadiq Khan, who's the current mayor, who's now saying he's going to stand for a 3rd term, has said, well, even though 73% responded against ULEZ expansion, where you have taxi drivers and, again, working-class people being impacted in their areas, and it's another tax on drivers and impositions, even though we said that, well, it's not a referendum, I'm not really that interested, I'm not doing it like that, utterly undemocratic, a whole patrician attitude. We've seen that, the Muslim community in Oxford can't get to the mosque, elderly people and others. And what's going to be happening is, I know certainly at Together we have a lot of signatories and members in Oxford, in Edinburgh, in Cardiff and in Canterbury, where these things are all happening. They are organising and they're getting vocal. And I think that people should realise that, you might think that this is a done deal, but a lot of people are very unhappy. And just as lockdown has finished and we've gone through all of this and all these businesses are suffering, now a lot of them are being killed by this, and it's really, really wrong.